Look at their faces right now. Watch how the blood drains when reality crashes through their comfortable little illusions like a freight train through paper walls. See that look? That's not confusion. That's not surprise. That's pure existential terror wrapped in disbelief, because they just realized something they can't unknow, something that's going to keep them awake for years. That weak version of you, that timid, apologetic, people-pleasing version they thought they knew, that was never real. That was a mask. And you've been him all along, the one they should have feared, the one they underestimated, the one who was playing chess while they were playing checkers. And now the game is over. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? Filed away in their mental cabinet under harmless, labeled as safe, categorized as someone who would never bite back, never rise up, never become a problem. They saw your kindness and mistook it for weakness. They watched you stay quiet and assumed you had nothing to say. They witnessed your patience and convinced themselves you were powerless. And all this time, you were just observing, cataloging, learning, waiting. Not because you couldn't act, but because you were choosing not to. There's a difference between can't and won't, and they just learned it the hard way. The mask wasn't your limitation. It was their protection from you. Now watch them scramble. Watch them rewind every conversation in their heads, replaying every moment where they dismissed you, every time they talked down to you, every instance they underestimated your intelligence. They're doing the math now, calculating just how much you saw, how much you knew, how much you let slide. And the answer? Everything. You saw everything. Every condescending smile, every backhanded compliment, every moment they thought they were slick. You weren't blind. You were strategic. You weren't naive. You were patient. You weren't weak. You were waiting. And now that the mask is off, they're staring at something they never prepared for. The real you. And it's magnificent. Let me tell you what's really happening in their minds right now. It's not just shock. It's a complete restructuring of their reality. Because if you were wearing a mask this whole time, that means everything they believed about you was fiction, which means everything they believed about themselves in relation to you was fiction too. They thought they were powerful because you appeared small. They thought they were intelligent because you played dumb. They thought they were winning because you let them think the game was theirs. But power was never about who talked the loudest. It was about who understood the game better. And you understood it perfectly. You just chose not to reveal your hand until the perfect moment. The funniest part, they're trying to convince themselves right now that they always knew something was off about you. They're rewriting history in real time, pretending they saw through your mask, when the truth is, they never suspected a thing. Not once. You played your role so convincingly that they built their entire perception of reality around your performance. And now that performance is over, and they're left standing in the ruins of their assumptions, wondering how the hell they got it so wrong. The answer is simple. You let them. You controlled the narrative from day one. You fed them exactly what they wanted to see, and they ate it up like starving children. Manipulation? No. Strategy? Absolutely. Here's what most people will never understand about masks. They're not always about hiding who you are. Sometimes they're about hiding what you're capable of. Sometimes the mask isn't protection for you, it's protection for them. Because if they knew what you were really thinking, if they understood the calculations running behind your eyes, if they felt the weight of what you've survived and transmuted into power, they wouldn't have gotten close enough to hurt you. The mask gave them confidence. It made them feel safe. It allowed them to underestimate you completely. And that was the strategy. You learned something they never will. There is immense power in being underestimated. When people think you're harmless, they show you their real face. When they believe you're naive, they reveal their true intentions. When they assume you're weak, they don't bother hiding their weapons. You gave them permission to be themselves around you. And in doing so, you collected intelligence they didn't know they were giving. Every interaction was reconnaissance. Every dismissive comment was them telling on themselves. And you were taking notes the whole time. Building a file in your mind about who they really were beneath their own masks. The weak version wasn't weak at all. It was calculated restraint. It was conscious choice. It was you deciding that the world wasn't ready to handle your full intensity, your complete truth, your unfiltered power. So you dimmed yourself, not because they demanded it, but because you chose it. There's a massive difference. Slaves dim themselves because they must. Kings dim themselves because they can. You weren't suppressing who you were out of fear. You were managing your energy, conserving your power, waiting for the moment when revealing yourself would have maximum impact, and congratulations. You timed it perfectly. Look at them now. They're spiraling right now, trying to figure out when the switch happened, trying to pinpoint the exact moment you changed. But that's the thing. There was no switch. There was no change. There was only a reveal. You didn't become this person. You've always been this person. The transformation they think they're witnessing, that's not evolution. That's unveiling. You didn't grow into your power. You were always powerful. You just stopped pretending you weren't. The mask wasn't covering your weakness. It was covering your strength. And now that it's off, they're seeing you for the first time, while you're seeing them exactly as you always have. Want to know the real kicker? Some of them are angry right now. Genuinely angry. Not because you deceived them, but because you were smarter than them. They're furious that they fell for it, that they bought the performance, that they never once questioned whether the version of you they knew was complete. And that anger, that's just wounded ego screaming. Because when you're used to feeling superior to someone, and suddenly that person reveals they've been 10 steps ahead the entire time, it shatters something in your psyche. It forces you to question every other assumption you've made. If they got you wrong, what else did they get wrong? And that question haunts them. Remember when they used to watch you? Remember when you could feel their eyes tracking your every move, monitoring your responses, waiting for you to slip up? They thought they were studying you, examining you, trying to understand what made you tick. They analyzed your words, dissected your actions, whispered about you in their little circles. They thought they were the observers and you were the observed. But here's the twist they never saw coming. You were watching them back the entire time. And while they were busy trying to figure you out, you were already 10 levels deeper into understanding them than they ever got with you. They watched you with amateur psychology, surface-level perception, trying to decode someone who was speaking a language they didn't even know existed. But you watched them with surgical precision. You studied their patterns, their triggers, their fears, their desperate need for control masked as concern. You saw through their fake smiles to the envy underneath. You heard what they weren't saying in between their words. You felt the energy shift when you entered rooms, sensed the nervous laughter when your name came up in conversations you weren't part of. You knew. You always knew. You just chose to let them think they were invisible. And now the dynamic has shifted permanently. Now they know that you know, and that knowledge, it's eating them alive, because they can't unknow what they just learned about you, which means they can't unknow what you know about them. Every secret conversation they had about you behind your back, you knew. Every plan they made without including you, you knew. Every moment they underestimated you, you knew. And you let them keep going, digging their holes deeper, collecting evidence against themselves, building the case for their own obsolescence in your life. You gave them enough rope, and they did exactly what you knew they'd do. The watchers are now the watched, and they hate it. They despise this feeling of being seen, being known, being understood on a level that makes them uncomfortable. Because when you wore the mask, they felt safe. They felt superior. They felt like they had the upper hand. But now that mask is gone, and suddenly they're the ones feeling exposed, naked, vulnerable. Suddenly they're the ones wondering what you're thinking, what you know, what you're planning. Suddenly they're the ones afraid. And that fear, that's not paranoia. That's clarity. They should be afraid, because someone who could hide that much power behind such a convincing mask, that's not someone you want as your enemy. Let's be brutally honest about what's really happening here. This isn't just about them discovering the real you. This is about them discovering how much of their perception was delusion. They built an entire reality where they were the main characters, and you were a supporting role, maybe even background scenery. They convinced themselves they were important, influential, powerful, and you were just there, orbiting their magnificence, absorbing their wisdom, grateful for their attention. But the curtain just fell, and the stage lights came up, and suddenly everyone can see the set was fake the whole time. They weren't the stars. You were. They were never the main event. They were the tutorial level you passed years ago. Now comes my favorite part. The aftermath. The slow motion collapse of their carefully constructed narratives about who you were and who they were. Watch them try to save face. Try to act like they always knew there was something different about you. Try to pretend they saw this coming. The revisionist history is already starting. They'll tell stories at parties about how they always sensed your potential, how they knew all along you were special. Lies. Beautiful, desperate lies to protect their egos from the truth. You fooled them completely, and it wasn't even hard. Some of them are experiencing genuine grief right now. And it's not grief over losing you. It's grief over losing their illusion of you. Because that version of you that they knew, that version that made them feel smart, feel important, feel powerful, that version is dead, and they're mourning it. They're mourning the comfortable lie that allowed them to feel superior. They're mourning the dynamic where they had control. They're mourning their perceived dominance in a relationship that was never actually theirs to dominate. And the cruelest part? You can't mourn something that never existed. They're grieving a fiction. And you're finally free to exist as fact. Here's what separates you from them. You never needed the mask to be yourself. The mask was social lubrication, strategic positioning, tactical advantage. But underneath it, you were always you. Complete, whole, unbroken. They, on the other hand, they need their masks, their confidence, their superiority. Their entire personality is built on maintaining certain illusions about themselves and others. Which means when your mask came off and shattered their illusions, their masks started cracking too. Now they're scrambling to maintain their own performances while dealing with the aftershocks of your reveal. You're not the only one who wore a mask. You're just the only one who took it off on purpose. The ripples are spreading now. Other people who knew you are hearing about this, seeing the change, witnessing the reveal. And they're all having the same crisis. If I got them wrong, who else have I misjudged? You're not just affecting the people who directly underestimated you. You're causing a systemic re-evaluation. You're making people question their perception, their judgment, their ability to read others. You've become a walking lesson in humility for everyone who thought they had people figured out. And the lesson is simple. You never know who's wearing a mask. You never know who's operating 10 levels above where you think they are. You never know who's choosing to appear small while being enormous. But let's get darker for a moment. Let's talk about the ones who are genuinely scared right now. Not embarrassed, not confused, scared. Because they didn't just underestimate you. They hurt you. They dismissed you. They betrayed you. They used you. And they did all of that thinking you were powerless to do anything about it. Thinking you were too weak, too kind, too naive to ever pose a threat. But now they know different. Now they know that the person they hurt wasn't helpless. They were merciful. And mercy can be revoked. Forgiveness can have limits. Patience can run out. And the most terrifying thing in the world is realizing you tested the limits of someone who was never limited to begin with. Let me explain something they still don't fully grasp. The mask wasn't forced on you by society, by trauma, by circumstance. It was a choice. A conscious, deliberate choice. You looked at the world, assessed the landscape, calculated the costs and benefits, and decided that revealing your full self wasn't strategically advantageous yet. That's not weakness. That's warfare. Sun Tzu. Level strategy. Appear weak when you are strong. You played the game better than they knew a game was being played. And now that you've decided the time for pretending is over, they're dealing with the consequences of underestimating someone who was always in control. The weak version wasn't a phase you grew out of. It wasn't training wheels you needed until you got stronger. It was a role you played because it served your purposes. Maybe it gave you time to heal without interference. Maybe it allowed you to observe human nature without people performing for you. Maybe it protected you from attention you weren't ready to handle. Maybe it was all of those things. But it was never who you were. It was what you chose to show. And choice. Choice is the foundation of all power. Slaves have no choice. Victims have no choice. But you had choice the whole time. You just exercised it quietly. Now they're wondering what else you're capable of. If you could hide this much power behind such a convincing mask, what else are you hiding? If you were this aware, this strategic, this controlled, while appearing to be none of those things, What's your actual ceiling? And the beautiful, terrifying answer is, they'll never know. Because now that they know you wear masks, they'll never be sure when you're wearing one. They'll never be certain what's real and what's strategy. They'll second-guess every interaction, analyze every word, look for hidden meanings in your silence. You've permanently installed doubt in their minds about their ability to read you. And that uncertainty, that's your new advantage. Here's the part they really won't want to hear. You could put the mask back on right now if you wanted to. You could slip back into that role, play that character, make them think it was all just a temporary glitch. But you won't. Not because you can't, but because you've decided they don't deserve that kindness anymore. They had access to the gentle version of you, and they abused it. They had proximity to your patience, and they exploited it. They were given a gift, your restraint, your mercy, your willingness to be underestimated, and they treated it like garbage. So now they get the truth, and the truth is sharp and unfiltered, and it doesn't apologize for making them uncomfortable. The mask coming off isn't just about them seeing you differently. It's about you deciding you're done, protecting their feelings at the expense of your authenticity. You're done shrinking so they can feel big. You're done playing dumb so they can feel smart. You're done being the supporting character in their delusional narrative where they're the hero. You've decided that your comfort, your truth, your full expression is more important than their fragile egos. And that decision? That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's not a villain arc. That's character development. You're not becoming something dark and twisted. You're revealing something powerful and real. So what happens now? Now you walk through the world as yourself, completely. No dimming, no filtering, no apologizing for your intensity. And it's going to be uncomfortable. For them, you're going to walk into rooms and the energy will shift. You're going to speak and people will actually listen instead of waiting for their turn to talk. You're going to exist at full volume, and some people won't be able to handle it. They'll call you changed. They'll say you're different. They'll claim you've become arrogant, cold, unrecognizable. Let them. Because what they're really saying is, you're not playing your old role anymore, and it's making me uncomfortable. Good. To be the source of their discomfort. They earned it. Living unmasked means accepting that not everyone will like this version of you. In fact, most of the people who loved the masked version will hate the real one, because the masked version made them feel good about themselves. The real version holds up a mirror, and they don't like what they see reflected back. The masked version was easy to be around. The real version demands authenticity in return, and most people are terrified of being authentic. The masked version asked for nothing. The real version has standards, boundaries, expectations, and people who got comfortable with you asking for nothing will be furious when you start asking for what you deserve. But here's the thing about living unmasked. It's magnetic. Yes, it repels the ones who were never meant to be in your life, but it attracts the ones who are. Because while the masked version of you attracted people who wanted something from you, the unmasked version attracts people who recognize something in you. Real recognizes real. Power acknowledges power. Authenticity gravitates toward authenticity. You'll lose quantity, but you'll gain quality. You'll have fewer people around you, but every single one of